Okay.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session of our symposium. This is Michele Governatori. I'm head of energy for Eco Think Tank. Eco Think Tank is a think tank based in Italy, and we do aim at contributing in a positive way to the debate and the knowledge about decarbonization. And I'm specifically responsible for energy markets. I am an economist. I've been working for 20 years in this sector. We don't have actually a title for this session, which will last 1 hour and a half. But basically, if I had to choose one, I would say we are basically going to speak and see papers about different forms of energy planning. We'll be including energy planning as is, and also capacity markets in the case of France. We will have three different papers examined and presented. I will ask the presenters to try to stay within 20 minutes, so we do have a possibility of welcoming questions that are expected to come through the Q&A window. First presenter of the day is going to be Olagunju Olaksungami about a paper about energy planning in Nigeria. So I ask you please to briefly present yourself and then to go through your paper for 20 minutes. Thanks a lot. The chair is yours, including presentations if you're going to use them.
Thank you very much. Very nice being here in AIEE conference of 2021. So I'm very impressed that despite the COVID-19.
Yes, maybe it's my problem. I hear you a bit low. If you can be closer to your microphone. Thanks a lot.
So can everybody hear me there?
Better, thanks.
Good. So now I'm presenting on Nigeria energy planning, prospects for sustainable development. So good morning, everyone. I am Olagunju Olasukomi Olusogo. So I came from the Center for Economic Policy Analysis and Research, in the University of Lagos. So I have other authors here with me, Olufemi Saibu, Isaac Nwagugu, Maya Modupe, and how do we come about this topic? As you can see, India has ample amount of energy resources. But despite the fact, not every training of the country has joining renewable energy. Everybody hear me?
Yes, but we do have some noise in background. Maybe it's from the person from AIEE.
Okay.
Okay, now I hope it's better. Sorry for that.
Okay, now we have been talking about sustainable development goals for some time being now, and if I'm correct, we can see that we have just 9 years to go, because these sustainable development goals have been scheduled, to have been executed by 2030. So now the central theme of this research now is to look at how goal 7, that is, energy goal, you understand, in the sustainable development goal. So how can Nigeria leverage on these energy resources to solve some other problem highlighted in the SDG? Like you can see in the SDG, you have the issue of public health, responsible consumption, job creation, business growth, and what have you. So now this paper is leveraging on an institutional approach to look at how the existing institution, agency, ministry can formulate policies that can transform Nigeria energy resources into sustainable development. If you go into some rural parts, this one is based on participant observation from different fields. You see that some households are still struggling to have access, to energy supply. Is it in the area of power? Is it in the area of renewable energy? Is it in the area of gas and what have you? And you will realize that most of these rural environments still depend, on burning of coal, charcoal, firewood, and all those things, despite the fact that we have ample energy resources. So this boils down to the issue of energy planning. How the government plan, the energy distribution and supply, because this research is talking about how Nigeria can replan the energy production, energy distribution to make sure that all families, all business, all households can have access to uninterrupted, or let me say sustainable supply. So this research came about some problems, we try to link the issue of poor planning, in the energy sector, although the country is doing, at least fair, yes, it's doing fairly. If you look at recent the regulation, this recent unbundling, you see government, is trying to look at how Goal 7 can be transformed, into sustainable solution in other subsectors. So now I try to look at how Goal 7 can be used to solve the issue of climate change. You understand? Because the world is going to a point whereby you will need to leverage on what you have, to get the kind of solution you require. So it is not that the country don't have planning at all. In fact, different governments have been trying to see how this goal can be achieved. And we, like I said earlier, we have just 9 years to go now. And if all these problems are not solved or partially solved, we might likely wait for another century or decade. So this is why this research is trying to, enlighten the policy stakeholders, the households, the investors on the essence, or the criticality of planning, for future generation and energy. Nigeria energy resources is enough to solve this problem if accurate planning are enforced, if accurate policies are executed. The problem here is not even about the formulation of policy, but the execution of the policy has been, marred or hampered by different political issues. So, like you see here, we have issues with, the increase in fossil fuel use, the greenhouse gases. If you come to some part of Lagos State now, it is highly, unbearable. The sun, as in the heat, is unbearable. So now the study here is looking at how government can divest the surplus, in the energy sector to solve other problems, to reduce the problem of hunger, to make education sustainable, to make, or let me say, to create an ease of doing business, to facilitate responsible consumption, and even the health issue. So now you will see that here we look at the energy targets in the power sector. Government is trying to see how every household, because many policy discussion have been conducted on this to link the issue of power shortage on poverty increase, the issue of power shortage on unemployment, because in Nigeria now, if the power supply can be maintained or increased, it's going to lead to more job creation. So that's why I'm arguing that the country must start looking at converting its abundant resources to sustainable remedies, like it has been done in South Africa. South Africa is using its ample energy resources to solve some other sustainable development problems. You will also see the energy targets in the oil and gas. You understand, government is even trying to ensure that the oil and gas, come at the epicenter of national development, because here we are talking about national development, and the world is coming to a place that is coming to a time that each nation might need to solve their problem. You understand? So now government in Nigeria must now, show a kind of institutional seriousness at using, or in using the abundant energy resources, the abundant oil resources to solve other contingents. So you will look at here, energy planning and sustainable development in Nigeria. So you will see that the world is also, despite the surges of COVID-19, we can still not deny the interconnectivity of, of global relations. So that is why I rightly highlighted here that Nigeria energy planning is done in line with international convention, especially the Sustainable Development Goal 2030. So you will see that I make serious emphasis on this Goal 7 because Nigeria has a comparative advantage in this Goal 7, and if the government can exhibit a kind of, like I said earlier, institutional seriousness, it can convert, this Goal 7 into competitive advantage, especially in both local and international markets. So we talk about the primary role government bear, in meeting the growing energy demand. Because if you look at Nigeria now, the issue of demographic shift is actually increasing the aggregate demand for energy resources. So government must plan, how to ensure that this population or this demographic shift will not constitute a liability but an asset if the right things, are done. So you will see here that we try to conceptualize energy planning here. Energy planning here, we try to look at how it can accelerate the process of acquisition and diffusion of technology and managerial expertise. And this is what has been missing in most of political institutions in Nigeria. You understand? So we need to ensure that we choose our leader not on political, affiliation, but on technological and managerial expertise, so that they can understand the relative importance of stability and self-reliance, in that sector, and even in Nigeria in general. So you can see that I try to, you will see that this paper also look at the importance of strategic planning, how we can prioritize, our problem, how we can streamline our solutions to meet our local demand. So you will see that is what that place is. So you will see here the challenges, what are the challenges? Because everything has to deal with the understanding of the challenges before you can talk about the solution. Like you can see here, we have the issue of poor management. This is very endemic in Nigeria. Although I think the current system is trying to see how this can be reduced over these different institutions, like here ICPC has been, but the operational mandate, the operational capability of this institution is still very uncertain. We can also see the issue of security anxiety, like it happened in the Niger Delta. Vandalization, is also part of the political, the socio-political crisis that is going on in the country is going to affect government ability to plan, because if the country is not stable economically, socially, politically, we cannot expect adequate supply of energy, and our socio-economic objective, might not be realized. So you will see the effect of, poor energy planning in Nigeria here. You understand? Like you can see here, poor energy planning has fostered inadequate production and electric supply of energy, services to the majority of business and public users. If you go to some rural and some urban area of Nigeria, this is critically affecting their business. I've been to different parts. I've been to Ibadan, I've been to Oyo, I've been to Ogbomoso, I've been to Lokoja to see, the connection or the relationship between what we are presenting and the realities on ground. So we can see that even infrastructural maintenance is the power. So, government will see the issue of, abundance of the energy sector into, transmission operation of Nigeria. We have the discos, we have the GENCOs, but the issue is, how are you solving the problem? It is not about even unbundling, it is about output and outcome. If you go to some part of Lagos State now, you will even find it difficult to live at night because of what? Excessive generator use. Nobody is talking about the air pollution. Nobody is talking about the emission into the water, emission. But the issue is, everybody needs energy. Everybody needs power to survive. Given the weather condition we are battling, and the issue of climate change is very serious in Nigeria now. So what we are saying is that we need to leverage on what we have to get the right kind of solution we have. So we can also see the issue of agricultural depletion. If government, try to make energy so sufficient, for every household, there is a way we can improve our agricultural production through provision of storage facility. But if you are talking of storage facility and you have no access to, to the required energy resources, you cannot make success. You can see the issue of urban pollution. Most of the human waste and industrial waste in Nigeria can be preventable if the right infrastructure are in place. You understand? Even most of the companies, that deal in renewable, that deal in environmental, are still complaining on the issue of energy supply, because they cannot be burning fuel. They cannot be burning fuel on generator to do their business. It will rather increase the cost of delivering their service. And when the cost of service is increased, some of the household will not be able to patronize that innovation. So they will rather go and be messing up the environment free of charge, rather than paying an institution that can cure their environmental pollution. So you will see even the transmission line. We made mention of transmission line here. It has been so fortunate that poor planning is also affecting them there. In fact, this is even based on the energy conference we had in 2019 and maybe 2018. So we discussed this critically, and most of these institutional leaders were present there. None of them can still deny the fact that we need a kind of serious planning. Not even the planning, we must show seriousness in implementation of this planning. You will see that it's even affecting weak people. So you will see the nexus between goal 7 and all other goals in this SDG. So it means if government can show a high level of institutional commitment, it can leverage on this goal 7 and solve at least 10 or 8 other problems in these SDG goals. So my conclusion, we can see that we cannot deny the impact or the influence of energy planning on sustainable development. In fact, 2 of them, based on the dictates of this research, you can see that 2 of them is operating like a 2 sides of a coin. When there is planning, the goal will be achieved. Poor implementation of the planning will frustrate the implementation of SDG. So we recommend government to promote an integrated flow of funding, to finance national energy programs and projects. We also try to recommend, reforming different regulatory policy and, make our legal framework for energy business so coherent that investors can come in. So I acknowledge the Italian Association of Energy Economy for providing this platform for researchers to showcase their innovation despite the issue of the problem of COVID-19. I acknowledge the contributors. I acknowledge the umbrella body, International Association of Energy Economy. You have done wonderfully well. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you for your presentation. It looks like you're quite a fan of energy planning. I have in mind some examples where energy planning can also lead to negative effects in terms of energy security, but I totally see your points. So while we wait for questions that might come even after, if that's okay for all of you, I will switch to our French colleagues with a presentation who will be about the French electricity capacity market, which to my understanding is a very interesting one, because it's the only one, if I'm not mistaken, in Europe, which is decentralized, based on a market of security certificates, whose buyers are the retailers. Actually, I'm very interested on this point. I would like to ask a question before giving the chair to the two of you. Who will be first, Guillaume Gonzalez or Jean-Baptiste Arnaud? Guillaume, okay. Okay, let me ask a question, Guillaume, before you take the chair. I'm based in Italy. In Italy, we do have a capacity market, but whose effects will start this January. So basically, it's almost impossible in Italy to do any assessment so far. Is the French system already started, and since when? Thanks a lot. The chair is yours. Please give also a brief presentation of yourself before your presentation. You have in total 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Can you see my screen correctly?
I can, but if you could zoom in, that would be easier to see. Or maybe use the full screen mode.
Good. Yeah. Indeed. So thank you very much for the presentation. Indeed, a few words about ourselves. Guillaume Gonzalez. I wrote this paper that we will present today to you with Jean-Baptiste Arnaud, that will present the second part of this presentation, and Jules Parolin, who unfortunately is absent, but also worked with us towards to provide this assessment of the French capacity mechanism. Maybe a few words of context that we have already prepared in introduction about the French capacity mechanism, with indeed the only decentralized capacity mechanism in Europe. There used to be a decentralized capacity mechanism in the US as well, but now it has been centralized. So it's indeed the unique security of supply market design, which is decentralized as for today. So maybe a few words of context on this market framework. Why did we introduce a capacity mechanism in France first? In France, the CCG, some generation technology, and in particular the CCGT, met some economic difficulties in the beginning of the 2010s. At a time when the security of supply indicators was deteriorating, and this triggered a debate on the imperfection of the energy-only market design, because as security of supply was deteriorating a lot, still producers could not get the revenues to cover their fixed operation costs. This is notably the case for CCGT, as I said, as GDF Suez closed mothballed 3 out of 5 of CCGT, showing that they met economic difficulties at the time. So this is in this context, that the French authorities decided to introduce a capacity mechanism. What is a capacity mechanism? First of all, it's a regulator, a power market regulatory framework, and to guarantee the French power security of supply within the European internal market of electricity, of course. Concretely, it will provide capacity owners with a revenue that will complement the income generated by the usual electricity market that you all know. And this additional remuneration is designed to maintain existing units necessary for the security of supply, or develop new capacities whether there are generation capacities or demand response capacities, if there is a need for new capacities so as to ensure the security of supply. So the last question is, how do we decide which is a good level of security of supply? So for this, the national authorities in Europe are competent to decide on this level of security of supply. In France, it was calibrated so that the loss of load expectation is lower than 3 hours per year. So maybe a few words on the loss of load expectation. It is statistically, on the long term, the number of hours that you could during which offer will not meet the demand in the electricity market. And it should be in France lower than 3 hours per year. So this criteria is called the reliability standard. It defines the European text, in the European regulation and the internal market for electricity, and it will have to be updated every 5 years. So it might be updated in the future in France as well. But in any case, the capacity mechanism is calibrated so as to respect this reliability standard set up at 3 hours per year. So obviously, after years dedicated to decide upon its appropriate market design and fine-tune every features with national and European stakeholders, because in the process of introducing the capacity mechanism, there is also a discussion between national authorities and the authorities of the DG competition of the European Commission for European countries, obviously. The French capacity mechanism was finally implemented in 2017. So we have now almost 4 years of experience of this capacity mechanism, which allowed us, as it was said in the introduction, to carry out this assessment of the French capacity mechanism, and this is what we want to present you today.
Guillaume, sorry for interrupting.
Maybe a few.
I'm still seeing,
yes.
I'm still seeing your first slide. I don't know if something wrong with my screen. I'm still seeing your first slide. I don't know if this is intentional or not. In case it's not, please be aware. Thanks.
Okay. I'm actually. Yeah, it's not indeed. Well, there must be an issue with the screen sharing. Well, I'm actually on the slide context of the study now, which is the third slide.
Maybe you can.
Well,
you can. Okay, now it's switched. Now it's okay. Thank you. Great. Now it works.
Okay, so I was on this slide, obviously. So I'm going to switch to the third.
Great,
slide
thank you.
Now,
please go ahead. Thank you.
How we carried out this assessment? It took a year and a half. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. It took a year and a half from January 2020 to June 2021 to carry out this study. We carried out this study with Jean-Baptiste and Jules as RT experts. So RT is the French TSO in charge of operating the French capacity mechanism, and we carried out an assessment of the actual functioning of the market device. This assessment addressed numerous requests from the French stakeholders. So it was a demand from electricity market player in France. And it was also foreseen by the market rules of the capacity mechanism through a review clause based on a full-fledged overview, which aimed at assessing the actual functioning of the mechanism and its efficiency after 3 years of operation. So how we organized ourselves, we first took 2 months of consultation with every electricity market player so as to determine the topics to address. Then we took 8 months for the analysis, and we shared results to every French stakeholders whenever they were produced, and then we consulted the chapters of the report and the results for 5 months so as to take into account every feedback received. As for today, we want to present you the submitted with some compliments as well, and this paper aim at addressing the following questions. Did the capacity mechanism enable the respect of the security of supply criteria, which is the actual purpose for its introduction? So did the capacity mechanism address the policy objective? And second, regarding the economic relevance to exceed the actual costs incurred by its implementation. To do so, we will present the paper in two parts. I will present the first one on the policy objective, and Jean-Baptiste Arnoux will take the floor next to present the economic relevance of the capacity mechanism and the results associated to that. So maybe regarding the first problematic, how did we proceed? So first of all, determining whether the French capacity mechanism has been useful in reaching the constituting the evolution of the French power system in a counterfactual situation in which no capacity mechanism would have been in place. So this is a starting point for our reasoning. To do so, we decided to carry out so this is actually the expected results. We want to build scenario representing counterfactual situation trajectories of the energy mix without a capacity mechanism. To do so, we carried out an economic viability assessment on each relevant technology constituting the French electricity mix. And we compared for all of this technology, the operational fixed cost with all energy revenues perceived. And when the costs were perceived higher than the revenues, the technologies were defined at risk. So this is the model that we designed to build those counterfactual situations. And then I finish with the starting point, actually, when it comes to modeling, actually, but what input data do we need so as to carry out this economic viability assessment? So we took into account, obviously, the net revenues from energy markets, so revenues less variable cost of production. We also took into account the revenues from flexibility services, so ancillary services, balancing markets, revenues, etc. And we compared these revenues. For demand response, we also took into account that some capacities were supported by call for tenders. In this case, we decided that they were not at risk even in a situation without a capacity mechanism. And we compared all these revenues to the fixed operation and maintenance costs for capacities that the capacities need to cover so that remaining in the market is an economically viable solution. So this is how we decided to model those counterfactual situations. On my next slide, it's a shame that I cannot share my full screen. Anyway, on my next slide, I present you an example on the analysis that we carried out regarding the economic viability. So on the up right of your screen, of my screen, you can see the results of the economic viability assessment carried out on gas turbines. That provides a conclusion, which is to say that gas turbines hardly cover their costs in 2018 and 2019 without the remuneration of the capacity. So, to be very clear, in red you can see the fixed and operation costs, and operation and maintenance costs with a margin for uncertainties, obviously. In green, you can see the revenue to determine whether the capacity was viable. Without a capacity mechanism, you need to remove the green part. In blue, you have the net energy revenues, and in orange, the revenues arising from flexibility. You can see on the graph that we actually carried out an analysis with two approaches. An approach which is called ex ante, where we decided to model the energy revenues as they were perceived by capacity providers before deciding to mothball their capacity. So we took forward prices when it comes to energy revenues and the approach ex post, which is based on the calculation of the actual revenue on the spot markets prices when it comes to energy revenues. In details, the analysis concluded that some semi-mechanism, in particular the CCGT, some gas turbines, but as you see on the graph on the bottom, on the upper right of the screen, some of them could cover their costs, notably ex ante, but mainly fuel turbines were at risk, and also some demand response things. Sorry for that. Yeah. The two counterfactual scenarios have been established considering that the proportion of mothball or the decommissioned capacities would have been higher the larger the deficit between electricity market revenues and functioning costs, or the more substantial the share represented by the capacity mechanism revenues. So this led us to notably decommission more fuel turbines, for which the gap between costs and revenues were higher. And it led us to build the counterfactual scenario that you can see on the graph on the bottom right of your screen, with two counterfactual scenarios resulting from the analysis that conclude that in the absence of capacity mechanism, the French power system would have been deprived of between 1.8 gigawatts to 3.5 gigawatts of available capacity over the 2017-2019 period. So I believe that this analysis is very precious, as it allows us to, it provides an actual assessment based on observed data, because as you know, we had to build those counterfactual situation, but still we base ourselves on actual revenue, energy and flexibility revenues. Finally, on this part, we concluded, we compared those counterfactual situations with the actual level of security of supply that we observed over this period. So what you have to know in context is that the gradual decommissioning of 10 gigawatts of thermal power plants since 2010 resulted in a French power system with no margin, with almost no margin regarding the reliability standards, set up at 3 hours of loss of load expectation, and particularly from 2017 onwards. In the presence of the French capacity mechanism, the security of supply level has actually remained slightly above the security of supply criteria, according to the yearly adequacy analysis that are led by RTE, we could deduct from that in whichever aforementioned counterfactual scenario without capacity mechanism, the reliability standard would not have been met over this period, and we would have had between 5.5 and 10 hours of loss of load expectation without a capacity mechanism. So the conclusion is that the capacity mechanism was crucial to reach the policy objective for which it was instituted, as it enabled to reach the reliability standard, which would not have been the case in an energy-only market design. Another conclusion for us is that despite that it provides revenue to capacity stakeholders, it did not overreach its targets, as it did not delay the closure of the fuel power plant, which were no more useful to the security of supply. So we had lots of closure over the 2017-2018 period, and that it actually the scenario that we lived, the scenario with a capacity mechanism, enabled to slightly to reach this security of supply criteria. So this is it for my part, and I will now let the floor to Jean-Baptiste Arnoux so that he can present the second presentation.
Hi everyone, thank you Guillaume for those elements on the security of supply. I will continue the presentation with the economic relevance of the French capacity mechanism. So maybe you can go to the next slide. I will begin with the point of methodology on the cost-benefit analysis applied on the paper we made. So on this slide, you can see in green all the terms associated with the benefit with the implementation of a capacity mechanism, and in red all the costs incurred by this implementation. So the first benefit provided by the capacity mechanism also corresponds to its first objective, which is the improvement of security of supply, and we can evaluate this benefit by the reduction of the energy not served, which is also the undistributed energy, which creates the socio-economic costs. So we will detail this on the next slide. Another benefit comes from the securing of the investment in new capacity, which were actually neglected in this economic analysis because of the low volume of new generation capacity on this period. And finally, there is a little benefit on the reduction of variable electricity costs, which I will present afterwards. And then, on the contrary, there is also some cost incurred by this implementation. There is fixed cost associated with the capacity that would not have be maintained without the capacity mechanism, and there is also all the implementation costs associated with the mechanism. To our knowledge, it is the first economic assessment of a capacity mechanism carried out ex post, and so it's the first one taking into account this implementation cost. So I will detail a bit more about the major benefit of the capacity mechanism, which is the gain associated with the improvement of the security of supply. And to assess this improvement and the benefit for the social welfare, we have a methodology in 3 points. The first point is to assess the capacity maintained by the capacity mechanism, which was already done in the previous part presented by Guillaume, and we conclude that between 1.8 gigawatt and 3.5 gigawatt would have left the French electricity system without the capacity mechanism. Then there is the second point is the estimation of the additional undistributed energy associated with the loss of this capacity in the counterfactual scenario. To do so, we have a link between the volume of capacity and the number of hours of loss of load expectation, thanks to a several simulation of the French electricity system. And the undistributed energy corresponds to the integral of this relationship. And so we can evaluate that the capacity mechanism have reduced the expected energy not saved by between 8 gigawatt per 6 gigawatt hour per year and 20 gigawatt hour per year. And finally, we can translate this energy not served into socio-economic value using the value of lost load, the VOL. The VOL is estimated in France at 20,000 euros per megawatt hour. And then the socio-economic gain associated with the reduction of the energy not served is estimated between 150 and 400 million euro per year. The second point that I will detail will be the implementation cost of the French capacity mechanism. As we already say, the French capacity mechanism is decentralized, which means that all the players in the electricity system play an active role in the French capacity mechanism, and so they all bear implementation cost. And these costs were estimated in a study on the basis on the internal study concerning the cost of RTE, but also on surveys for all the other stakeholders. We did not have a response from all stakeholders, so we did an extrapolation to determine all the costs, all the implementation costs from the capacity mechanism. So we can take into account all the operating and investment expenses linked to this mechanism. And finally, you can show it on the right. The major part of the cost is bear by the market player, which is logic in a way, because it's due to the decentralized market in France. And finally, the total cost of the French capacity mechanism, the total cost of the implementation is around 100 million at the end of 2018 and 19, sorry, and so it will be around 30 million euro per year. So finally, on the final slide, we have taken into account all the benefit and costs coming from the implementation of the capacity mechanism in France. There is one gain that we have not detailed, but it's quite negligible, that's coming from the variable cost of the generation. And there is also another cost coming from the fixed cost of the capacity that would not be maintained without the capacity mechanism. And this cost is estimated between 50 and 100 million per year. But at the end, if we take into account all the costs and all the benefit that appears, the French capacity mechanism have created benefit for the society. And this benefit is evaluated between 75 million euro per year and 280 million euro per year. That is the result of her ex post analysis of the French capacity mechanism. RTE have also made ex ante analysis, cost benefits analysis of the French capacity mechanism, and ex ante the benefits anticipated was higher and around 400 million euro per year. Maybe Guillaume, if you want to say a word of conclusion about our work. You have your.
Can I ask a question in the meantime? Thanks for your presentation. Who have been so far the main suppliers of reserve capacity in this market?
I'm not sure to understand the question. Could you repeat, please?
Yes, I'm sorry for not being very proficient on your capacity market. So my question is, who are the providers of reserve capacity? So it's RTE who is selling capacity and providing. So
yeah.
Or
this is a very good question, actually. Yeah, I get the point. So the specificity of the French capacity mechanism, as we said, is that it is decentralized. So this is the retailers, the power retailers that have to get on the market to buy capacity certificates. On the other hand, available capacity, every available capacity in France, whether there are demand response, renewables, fossil power plants, nuclear power plants, can certificate their available capacity during winter, because the actual security of supply issues in France are during winter. So for every capacity available during winter, they can certificate their capacity at the right amount of megawatt that will be available for the winter. And then they can sell those certificates directly to the retailer. So there is a market. As for the energy market, we have some market operators. So very quickly, Apex Spot is providing some auctions. Is organizing some auction, which are basically a paid as cleared mechanism on which retailer and capacity provider will exchange certificates. There is also an over-the-counter market, an OTC market, that is allowed by some IT developed by RTE and operated by RTE. But basically, it's a free market. You have offer and demand sides operators that freely exchange some certificates. And in the end, obviously, RTE will control that the retailer have the right amounts of certificates to cover their demand during winter. And if not, there is some penalty apply. And it's basically the same one on the offer side. If some capacity provider demanded too much certificates compared to the actual availability, they will pay some penalty. So this is how the market works, and basically RTE is not playing an active role in the exchange of certificates.
Very interesting. Just the last question from my side. I don't see for the moment other questions from the participants or panelists. The price of such certificates, how does it interact with the price of ancillary services market? Because since you have now the price of certificates, I guess there might be some interactions. I don't know if this is relevant. Is it something that you have investigated?
Yes, actually, this is a very good question. We indeed investigated those questions. What we can conclude is that it's not very clear that the capacity market had a clear impact on the prices on the FCR and AFFR when it comes to European acronyms. However, we were able indeed to conclude that when it comes to the tertiary reserve, so the non-automatic reserve, the capacity mechanism had introduced had a clear effect on how those price dropped after its introduction in 2017. Because basically in both cases we remunerate megawatt available for the security of supply. Only the tertiary reserve will have a look on the short term, the capacity mechanism on the long term. But still there is a clear effect. Capacity mechanism have a clear effect on the prices of this tertiary reserve, especially during winter. So we could see that the prices almost drop by the same amount of the additional remuneration provided by the capacity mechanism.
Very interesting. Thanks a lot. I don't know if you want to add anything for conclusion. I ask all the panelists if you can, if you're
yes, maybe
go ahead.
Yeah, a very small word of conclusion. I think the thing that we wanted to say is maybe to insist on the fact that yes, maybe just to slightly insist on the fact that the main added value of analysis to the literature is that it is actually based on observed data and on a situation where we see the capacity mechanism functions. And in particular, I'm thinking of this second part presented by Jean-Baptiste. We were actually able to evaluate the actual implementation cost of a capacity mechanism So as explained by Jean-Baptiste, it might not be the same order of magnitude for a centralized capacity mechanism, but still it provides an evaluation. And this is, I'd say, a new added value to the literature compared to what exists yet. So I guess this is how the paper would improve the knowledge on this capacity mechanism.
Thanks a lot. I would like to ask all the panelists if you want to send me a copy of your presentations, if this is possible. I've written my email in the chat box. So we've been mentioning the expectation of lost load, the cost of having loss of electricity, and I think the next presentation by Yermon Sargsyan is about that with a case of effects, I think, sanitary sector of loss of electricity in Kyrgyzstan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Please, Yermon, go ahead, take the chair and present briefly yourself before you start your presentation. You have approximately 20 minutes, so we have a few minutes for questions after that. Thanks a lot. Chair is yours.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Yermon Sargsyan. I'm PhD candidate at Institute of Economic Studies at Charles University in Prague. Well, colleagues, first of all, I just want to check if my slides work. So can you see how I'm changing them? Because is it fine? You see how they change from last slide? Okay.
I see them changing, right?
Okay, good, because I have this problem last time. That's why I'm checking it. Thank you very much. So I'm going to continue the topic of the reliability of supply, but I will speak more about how they actually affect the health of the children. So I choose Kyrgyzstan as a transition country for my empirical study to understand basically how the frequent outages affecting the health outcomes of the household. And for this paper, I concentrate more how they are affecting children aged below 5. So as a proxy for health outcome, I choose height for age z-score and weight for age z-score. References provided by World Health Organization. So let me speak about the literature background of my research, how actually electricity can affect the health of the household members. So literature underlined 3 pathways. First of all is that if you don't have reliable supply to the electricity, particularly in developing world, people may switch to more traditional means of the heating, let's say wood, coal, etc., which may increase indoor air pollution and may cause a lot of respiratory diseases, cardio diseases, or renal diseases cases. So next pathway is that if you don't have reliable supply to the electricity, this will cause a lot of problem with the water supply. So most probably you will not have opportunity to properly boil it, and you will consume some contaminated water, which will cause a lot of problem with gastrointestinal system. So, and the third pathway is temperature-related illnesses, of course. So if it is really hot or if it is really cold, there's a lot of ways the child can have problem with health. Let's say in Kyrgyzstan during the summer it's really hot, so kids may have problem with sleeping, which may negatively affect their appetite, and this may negatively affect their height or weight, so Haz and Baz basically. Or maybe it's really cold indoors, so during winter it's cold in a country, so which may cause a lot of problem, like a kid may catch cold or may again have some problem with nutrition, etc. So all this problem starts because of the issue of the electricity supply. So let me speak a bit about the Kyrgyzstan. It's a land-located country bordering with Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, China, and Tajikistan. There's a huge problem in the country with the frequency of the outages, and you can see that the problem is quite big for the heating season. So Q1 here and Q4 here is indicated as a heating season for the country. Since the power generation of the country depends on a hydropower mainly, for the winter season, they supposed to import electricity, and usually they have political issues, etc. with their neighbors. That's why it causes a lot of problem, and of course it causes frequent outages. The next problem in the country is relatively low tariffs, which results in small investment in infrastructure, and this actually results in poor infrastructure and a lot of blackouts of the already existing capacity. So here you can see some data provided by World Bank. They indicate that during 2009 to 2012 in the country, on average, there were 43 outages a day, which is like quite big number. And what about the duration of these outages? If we believe the official authorities in a country, the SYMPOSIUM index is on average 3 hours. So on average 3 hours is the system energy interruption duration index for the country. And I compare it also with the enterprise survey conducted by World Bank, where World Bank actually were asking how long the power outages has been last. So the respondent answered that on average it was 3 hours and it is not less than 1 hour. So you can see that duration of outages is quite significant. So in this paper, I'm using household level data from the Kyrgyzstan. One of the limitations that I don't have particularly the duration of the electricity outages for each household. So I just have the frequency of the electricity outages for each household. It is divided to several categories. So basically it is once a month, once a week, several times a week, every day, or never. So you can see here from these 3 years that it is quite common phenomenon in a country. So basically in all 7 regions and in big cities, they have issues with electricity outages and households are struggling with this issue. Here you can see my summary statistics. So basically you can see that in my sample, height for age, stands for height for age, is negative, which means that for the full sample itself in the country, we have this issue of malnutrition. Because of the systematic malnutrition, kids usually have negative height for age. Z-score is a standard deviation of the, let's say, Kyrgyz child in my sample from the reference mean provided by World Health Organization. So it is basically showing how far away, what is the standard deviation between a child from Kyrgyzstan from this reference mean provided by World Health Organization. And this is in line with the what demographic health survey is telling about the Kyrgyzstan. So basically my sample is quite representative sample for the country. For this study, I use coordinate exact matching. I will speak more about this, but let me just save some time and speak about my model. So basically, I am trying to understand how the frequency of outages affecting the weight for age z-score and height for age z-score of the child. So outages here is just binary indicator. I divide it so that I have 2 groups. So in my one group, I have households with frequency of outages more than once a month, and the other group is once a month or less. So basically this is dummy variable. X stands for the household characteristics. So basically this is how much money household spends on food, how much money, what is the income of the household, what are the number of dependent household members, age of the child, etc. And of course, I'm controlling for year fixed effect and time fixed effect because I have panel data. So let me speak more about my matching results. So basically, I match according to the income of the household, food expenditure, household size, whether household heating the house with the stove or no, whether they are cooking on tandoor, this is outdoor cooking, they usually use wood or coal for this, whether the household is in rural areas, so basically 60% of the households in the country is in a rural area, so whether households receive remittances, and of course I'm controlling for the regions of the location of the household. So basically here you can see that my balance in a sample is 0.97, and after matching I have significant change of this balance. So now it is 0.80. After this I run regression for fixed effect, and this is my results for the fixed effect, and you can see that for my matched data, so first two column is the matched data and third and fourth column is for full sample. You can see that I have significant negative results of the electricity disruption and frequent outages in the country, affecting negatively the anthropometric outcomes of the children. So this is a very important result because particularly height is a very important indicator. It means that there is systematic malnutrition because of the electricity outages, and this may cause a lot of problem for the child in his future life. He may be not able to study well, and this may affect also the human capital in a country. So basically, started from the early age, this problem may affect for the future human capital in a country. So this is basically it for this research. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to hear your comments.
Thanks, Hermon. Maybe I've missed something, so sorry if I'm going to ask a question which is trivial with respect to your work. But can you please recap in a qualitative way what are the reasons of this health and also human capital effects of outages? Is that because interruption in the possibility of getting online education too, or is that an important effect? Does it make a role in that?
Well, according to World Health Organization, if a child struggling with negative HAS, which means that there is systematic malnutrition. So basically, if the height of a child is less than the standard, the child will have a lot of problem in a school. So preliminary school education will become a huge problem for him. And later university education and later becoming valuable member of the society will be a huge problem. So this is what the channel that World Health Organization is telling us, that why we should really care about the height and the weight of the child before age 5. So why it is important. Sorry, if this was the question, or maybe I.
No, that's okay. No, that's interesting. My question was more about the if you had to tell what are the main reasons why power outages do influence such health measures, factors? What is the main point you would suggest? Is disruption in the access to education, disruption in access to health services?
Yeah, yeah, I get your. I get your point. Yes, there's a huge literature. This is a valid point. There's a huge literature that underline how disruption affects health system, how disruption affects education system. So in my research, I more concentrate how disruption affect the well-being of the household. So basically, in my case, I will say, so okay, if they don't have electricity, reliable electricity supply, so they need to heat their houses, right? So they will just heat their houses with wood, which will increase indoor air pollution. And this is a huge problem in a country. If you watch the statistics of the pollution, etc., during the winter, they have coal everywhere, they have air problem everywhere, and this is a huge problem in a country. So the next thing, during the summer, it's really hot. It's like 45, 50 in a Celsius. So they need to have air conditioning, or at least something that helps to make the temperature in a room better. So if we are speaking about small kids, all the stuff affecting the appetite, first of all, of the child. So basically, child stop eating, child drink water that is not treated properly. It may cause diarrhea, it may cause a lot of other problems, which as literature suggests, actually is affecting the Haas and VAS of the child. So basically, the problem in a country, and my suggestion here is that, and this is not only my suggestion, but also a lot of more respectful organization, international organization is suggesting about the country, is that they should increase the tariff system, and they should change the tariff system, because in 2005 and in 2010, they tried to change tariff system, but there were huge social unrest, and the politics were very scared they will lose their position. And that's why they decided, okay, let's keep the things how they are. We will subsidize this, but the problem is it's not enough. So tariffs are really low, and there is not enough investment in the capacity of power generation. So things are going to be worse and worse with the years. And it is the case now. So this is the main problem. So when people start complaining that they don't have enough income to pay high tariff, they should really understand how this low tariff is affecting their own well-being. So thinking about short term and thinking about long term, this is what's important, and this is what my study is showing. So you need to really understand how this low tariff affecting your child and how it is affecting the human capital in your country. So
that's very interesting to hear, and it contributes to quite a big debate which is happening, as you know, in Europe about energy poverty. And it reminds me also on other papers that I've read about the importance of electrification itself to health, especially for the cooking activity within households. That's a very interesting point. But if I can comment on that, it is also electrification still has huge potential for health and welfare effects, even in more developed countries. If I can make the example of Italy, where I'm based, according to the European Environment Agency, in Italy we do have 80,000 premature deaths in Italy, 80,000 a year, because of exposure to air pollution, especially in northern big towns like Milano, Verona, the Po Valley. And the main two reasons of air pollution in our cities are transport, so based on fossil fuel usage, and heating. gas and oil heating in houses. So that's a very interesting point. So what electrification and security of supply and also tariffs, as you said, how do they influence well-being, and even how this can be measured through health effort. So thanks a lot for your presentation. So guys, I don't see questions coming in within the questions panel. We are slightly ahead of schedule. It's not compulsory that we stay here until 10:30. But if you and I'm speaking to the audience, to the panelists, if you have final remarks or questions or anything that you want to raise, please do that now. Let's see if there are any. Otherwise, we can close our section. And please, if you didn't do so, send me a copy of your presentations. I would really love to have them. So any questions or final remarks from anyone? Okay, if not, so from my side, I really thank you for participating to this panel. I'm now, no, sorry, there is something on the chat. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sending your presentation. So thanks again to all of you. I'm switching now to a member of the audience and seeing the rest of the symposium. Thanks again. So, okay, ciao.
Bye.